Good evening, Browns fans. It's Wednesday at 7 o'clock, and this is OBR Weekly presented by Core Home Fitness. I'm Barry. That's the legend, Mr. Fred Greetham, and we're here to talk Browns as they move effortlessly through an offseason with no distractions. How's it going, Fred?
Is there anything happening around here?
Just another boring week of hanging out.
Nothing to talk about, nothing to write about. This is the most boring off. This is all your fault because you complained all last year that it was too calm, no excitement, no chaos. Now we got nothing but chaos, so I hope you're happy, big man.
No.
I'm not happy. I'm not happy. I'm ready to let it rip tonight.
Yeah, all right. So, let's turn this into Get Off My Lawn Hour. Absolutely. If you are watching the program, and if you can hear me, you probably are, then please hit us up in the YouTube and Twitch chat rooms and hit us up with your questions and comments. I brought a couple from Ask the Insiders and all that sort of stuff that we can go through. But by and large, we don't want to talk about what we want to talk about. We want to talk about what you want to talk about. Yeah, I'm guessing that has something to do with 95 most likely, but we're open to other subjects as well. So, let's dive into it and get to it. Before we do, though, if you are not an OBR subscriber, well, first of all, shame on you. But secondly, you should be aware that today is free VIP day on the OBR. So even if you're not a subscriber, you can go in and snoop around all the premium forums, read to your heart content, read all of our VIP articles. It's all across the 24/7 network. If you're into college sports and stuff like that, it's all free. So you can go in and read anything. And then at the end of the day, if you liked what you see, you can subscribe at 60% off for an annual. That's the big deal we got going today. So take advantage of it, even if you don't plan on subscribing, take advantage of it for a day. It's all out there. It's all free. All right. So let's get into this Myles Garrett thing. You wrote about it, Fred, yesterday. And one of the things you did is you pointed to the Deshaun Watson trade as being sort of the match that lit this particular fire. But, having made that trade, do you think there's any plan that Andrew Berry and this team in the front office could come up with that would mollify Myles Garrett at this point? Any magical solution that you could put on a PowerPoint presentation and show him?
No, but he knows, what's going on. And, and I saw some of his comments today. He said, it's like I wrote in the story, you can, what are you going to do? Say, where do you want to go, Myles? The Kansas City Chiefs, the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, I don't care who you pick. You can't guarantee you're going to make it to the Super Bowl or let alone win it.
Right.
That's just the way it is set up. They're talking about historic numbers here for the Chiefs if they get a three-peat. Nobody's ever done that before. I mean, and they're talking about this is the great, and you're talking about the Tom Brady era and everything. So it's not very easy to even make the Super Bowl, let alone get back there.
Right.
So with that said, I saw in his comments saying, well, I know I could go, well, you're saying right there, you're saying that, the team that's going to have the most to offer you in value, at least the Browns, is going to be a 3-14 team or a bottom feeding team. How in the world does that just with what you're saying, And so there's just so many things. He's talking out of both sides of his mouth.
Right.
I think obviously money's a big factor for any NFL player, but I do think just about every NFL player would say they want to win the Super Bowl. I mean, that's a goal. That's what they want to do. Who doesn't? But you just don't say, all right, it's not like the NBA where you can pick everything and you only need 5 guys playing. I mean, if you're going to go to the total team sport, there's a lot of things you can't control out there. But like I said in that article, it's a domino effect from the worst trade in history. I mean, as that's playing out, now the ripples are affecting, even further with your best player being disgruntled.
Right.
But that doesn't take him off the hook. I mean, I don't get the timing. I guess the timing today would be to say he when they ask him, oh, it was just the right time. Well, you could have done that a month ago. You could have done that. You wait until the Pro Bowl or the Super Bowl week when everybody's going to have you on the show and you can just burn the bridges and force the Browns to trade you to make it look so bad. Meanwhile, he's trashing the Browns like who wants to come there now? I mean,
Right.
and unless Andrew Barry, Jimmy Haslam then said, you're right. We're just going to give up because we've done so bad this year. We're just going to forfeit and sit this season out, maybe even just turn in our chips and not have a team anymore here in Cleveland. Right. Yeah, that's what we want to do as a kind. How does this help the Browns? That's the only thing that should be in the team's mindset. If they can make a trade that makes them immediately better, okay. But just to accommodate the guy, just to make him happy, that doesn't cut it. That's probably your best asset. And you're going to take your best asset and just say, okay, whatever makes you happy. You're not happy with money. You took the contract. You signed a contract for 2 more years. Play out your contract, refuse to sign an extension, and become a free agent or whatever. I mean, we've seen this over and over with guys demanding trades. Lamar Jackson, Brandon Ayuk, everything turns out hunky-dory. He's saying it's not about the money. Probably it's not. But even if they want to trade him, the financials I'm looking at, I don't know how you trade him. No. I mean, how do you trade? I mean, everybody watching this says, Deshaun Watson, cut him, get rid of him. They believe me, they want to do that. But they can't because they're shooting themselves in the foot. That's why they have to work around him with the dead cap and so forth. You want to do that now with Deshaun Watson by accommodating him and trading him? That's $37 million in dead cap. That now you saw the stories. You have to restructure Watson fully. You got to restructure Ward fully, and you got to cut Jack Conklin just to get under to accommodate him. Right. It's like, I'm sorry, Myles. You can sit on the bench, sit the season out if you want. You don't get paid. You lose another year, 2 years of your career, or you be part of the solution because we just cannot trade you because of the financial side of it. Nobody's talking about that. Everything, oh, yeah, let's work it out. Get him to here, get him to there. Well, that's great, but that doesn't work.
Right. He has no leverage, as Kelly Black points out here. He has no leverage. He's got a signed contract, right? All he can do is be annoying, basically, and then he could sit out and waste some of the prime years of his career. Doesn't seem to me like he's got a lot of choices in it. Kelly also says, what's the least passive resistance on a resolution for both sides, or is there, not one? And from their public statements right now, it doesn't seem like there is one, right? If you take them at their word.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the thing is, obviously, a year ago, they're 11-6, make the playoffs. He's making statements like, I want to finish my career here. He said that after the Amari Cooper trade, whether it was in October, I think it was in October, maybe November, that I want to finish my career here. Now, a couple months later, he wants out. And he's one of the teams, somebody was asking him on his interviews about Washington. Well, a year ago, they were 4-13, and they got the number 2 pick. They got a quarterback in the draft. and they're in the playoffs, and now that's a destination everybody wants to go to. Well,
Right.
he didn't even wait to see what they could do. He knows full and well they can't make a move for 5 or 6 weeks. So why can't you just keep it in-house, keep it under to yourself, even if that's what you, and see what's going on before you make your demands? I said,
Right.
And it happens all the time. Baker Mayfield probably would have still been with the Browns if he wouldn't have blown off, when the Browns got turned down by Watson, and then he went off and did one of these things and burned the bridges. And then the Browns really had no choice but to go offer and to try to get back in the Watson deal at whatever cost. Mayfield, if he would have just been quiet, said, well, it fell through. Okay, you're still the quarterback, and so forth. But
Right.
these guys, and professional athletes today, they don't honor contracts. They just want what's best for them immediately. They want immediate gratification. If I'm not at the top, I want traded or I want to go somewhere else. And the way it is in the sports world, just about everybody gives in. They don't, we don't want to be the bad guy. It's another sport. But a few years ago when the Cavs, were in the midst of their run, Kyrie Irving, he threw a fit that he didn't like being second fiddle to LeBron James, so he asked to be traded. They traded him. They traded him to like their arch rival, the Boston Celtics. I mean, if I wouldn't have been a good GM. If I was the GM, I would have traded him to the Sacramento Kings, where you never hear from him again. And same thing here. It's like, I think if you decide the best shot is to trade him and give in, you got to get the best deal you can get. You're not trading him to the Cincinnati Bengals or the Baltimore Ravens or Kansas City Chiefs. Trade him, okay, make your fortunes in Seattle or somewhere.
Yeah.
But just to accommodate somebody. And even closer to home, OBJ. I mean, when that all happened, that season, it was right in the middle of the season. He orchestrated his way out of Cleveland. Everybody knows that. He really torpedoed the Browns season. They still were in the hunt, so to say, when that happened. And Andrew Berry accommodated him. He could have said, well, we just want you to go sit at home, because we don't want you around the team if you're going to be like that. What they do, they went out of their way to work out how to cut him and let him go wherever he wanted to. He ends up going and gets a Super Bowl. I didn't even agree with that. Why did you let the guy ruin your season like that? And if I remember right, it was kind of a camp of Baker, OBJ. And I think Myles was on the OBJ side, like get Baker out of here so we can win. And so I don't know. We've been talking about this, what the Browns can do. We're flushing the Deshaun Watson situation. And so now you hit rock bottom. And now, okay, what can they do, to turn it around, pivot, and get it going? And then this comes along. And now you're right back on the bottom trying to figure out the best path forward.
And the thing about it is no one looks good, right? No one looks good. The Browns are getting trashed, right? In a lot of situations, Myles would look like a malcontent, but it's the Cleveland Browns, so everybody understands why he would want to leave there, because they've stunk for 25 years. But still, Myles doesn't look good. He used the phrase Cleveland to Canton, which everybody interpreted as a shot at Andrew Berry, but now as people are spreading through, the usual suspects that he didn't really mean it, anything, negative by that. Well, then he should have chosen his words a little bit more carefully, because everybody and their brother interpreted that as a shot at Andrew Berry. And then you've got the examples that you use, Fred, where he's saying very recently, he'd like to finish his career in Cleveland. Now it looks like he went off and had a conversation with LeBron and his people or whatever and changed his mind, and now he's acting sort of impulsively. I don't think Myles Garrett looks very good through this either.
And I don't think that's going over well in Northeast Ohio to say LeBron James. I mean, LeBron James's agency that he works with, Clutch Sports, which is Rich Paul, another kid from Akron who made his fortune because of being here and the hookup with LeBron James. You know, it does frustrate me. The fan in me is that, you know, he didn't do the TV special and fly to Connecticut to meet with Jim Gray and then announce to the world that he was going to take his talents to South Beach. But he pretty much did by saying, I talked to LeBron James. What's the inference? LeBron says, you got to burn bridges and get out of there. You know, and I don't know if he said, go to the Super Bowl and get on every radio and talk to every team and get everybody, because everyone you hear, all these teams are all trying to scheme how they can get Myles Garrett. They don't care about, you know, the Browns or anything like that. And all I'm saying is the Browns have to look out for themselves. Mm-hmm. They've been one of their worst enemies, but I don't know, you know, right now where you're at. If you trade him, you're kind of giving in. Already said the financials. You would bury yourself for 2-3 more years unless there's something that somebody else that's smarter than me knows how to do. But it just is very it's very frustrating, very disingenuous. You could make these things known. The Browns known that if he told them, just keep it under the hood. Now, that's stolen the thunder of the Super Bowl news this week in the NFL.
Yeah.
And so
Travis Kelce being asked questions about Myles Garrett.
Yeah. You know, and so it just makes the Browns look bad over. And believe me, they've been their own worst enemies for way too long. But I think they did everything. They thought, obviously, that the Deshaun Watson thing was going to put them into the Super Bowl category, not back to a 3-14 team. Now they are where they're at. The worst case scenario of all the options, that's what we're living through. And he just kicked them when they're down, you know, like to do this now just puts everything into a tailspin. I don't know how this affects their, I just don't know how this affects their planning. You know, they would say, oh, does it? Yeah, it changes everything, because my path to get back was the defense is the closest, get some pieces, you know, and you can be back top 10 defense. Well, you take out 14 sacks and, you know, and everything, you know, defensive player of the year. And all of a sudden, I don't care what you get for it, unless you get Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb. You got to get players that can play right now at the top of their game. And they would have to be, you know, I'm not talking about a future draft pick. What are you going to do? Trade and get the 28th pick in the draft from the Lions? You know, you're going to get a guy like Greg Newsome, you know, or somebody, you know, that most people you've heard of if you're really into the draft, but it's not like a game changer. You get a game changer, they're usually in the top 5.
And we've spent the last, you know, couple of weeks here talking about how critical it is that the Browns, you know, if they trade down, don't trade down too far, because you need to get an impact player. We're not talking about draft pick number 28 here that we need to go to. So there's a couple of ways I want to structure this conversation, right? One is about whether the Browns can move Myles Garrett. And if we can put that concern aside, which is very difficult to do, then we can get into the question of, should the Browns move Myles Garrett? And World's Fastest Fat Man helps me lead off here. He says, I think we need to offer this situation some time and space. In the same way we get upset with the team, the players may as well. And yes, the reality is that we can't let him go. Sorry, not sorry. So, you know, I know we've all been in situations, Fred can certainly relate to this, where, you know, you've got maybe not the greatest boss and you'd love to go somewhere else. You know, I've been in that situation. I've been in that situation, certainly myself, and I've left a job because I had no faith in my superiors, you know, and I had that flexibility because I didn't have 5-year contract that was paying me tens of millions of dollars, right? I could just leave with 2 weeks notice and get out. But Myles is not in that situation. He's got a contract, and he's got a contract structured such that the financials make it next to impossible to let him go. Now, we've already established that, talk to Jack Duffin. Jack's been on a lot of these shows. He did a video. We've got on the front page of the OBR. Go check that out. Financials just don't work, folks. But let's take a giant leap and say, okay, let's make the financial concerns go away. If you're Andrew Berry or Kevin Stefanski and you're trading Myles Garrett and getting back a bunch of draft picks, what does your job security look like? Right? I mean, what chance do you have of being GM in 2026, Fred, in using all those draft picks?
Well, you don't have much security unless Jimmy Haslam says go for it, you're safe. Unless that's who's backing you. But yeah, I agree, and that's what I'm just saying. It's like, look, Myles, if we just said, hey, go work out your best deal, and you go to the Bills or you go to the Chiefs or somebody, at the top of the heap right now, you just, first of all, you can't do it because all you're doing is, like we said, the Browns make all these cuts and get rid of everybody just so they can make the trade to get under the cap. I mean, that makes no difference. And so, yeah, I just think that, you can even say the financials did work. You're going to trade them if you trade them to a top tier team, like I said, the reason the Browns traded 3 number ones, they thought they were going to be drafting 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st, 32nd. Those are almost worthless, And if you're going to, the only way you can make the financials work is if you wait till after June 1st, cut down, then you can absorb it. But by then, all the moves have been made. So unless you're getting a starting quarterback for Myles Garrett, I've kidded with you, like we can say how great Myles Garrett is. I said this a while ago, many times, but they didn't they could have drafted Patrick Mahomes with that pick, and
Right.
obviously they would if they had it to do over again, even before Myles said anything. The quarterback is where it's all at. You go down the list of quarterbacks, starting quarterbacks in the NFL, which one could you trade for that would be the equivalent of Myles Garrett? Now, you're not going to get the Bengals to trade Joe Burrow. You're not going to get the, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. But where down that list can you get a starting quarterback that's legitimate? Okay, now you're in a different discussion. If you can solve at least that problem,
right,
that's a different discussion. Because I think obviously Myles Garrett's great, but if you could have a franchise quarterback, that is greater. And that's where I even threw out, let's say the Titans right now. These are all hype, make believe, because we don't know if Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders or somebody else is a franchise quarterback that's going to be here. But if you were sold that one of those guys was, and you thought the Titans were going to take him with the first pick, okay, there's your destination. Send him to the Giant or to the Titans and take Cam Ward and Abdul Carter with the first 2 picks.
Right.
Kind of replaced Garrett, and you got your quarterback. Or if the Giants behind you, you did the same thing. If you liked them both, then you could know you'd get one of them. You take Abdul Carter and the other quarterback. If not, if you don't think those guys are it, then you got to make a trade and go down the list where you would cut it off of making a trade. That's the only positive I can see out of this, but you still got a lot of, and that's where if you waited till after June, I don't know if you can, if a team would make a trade and wait for 3 months, it doesn't do you any good in the off season. So there's just too many complications. I think the
Right.
key is the draft and I don't know. Everybody says that there's no sure quarterback, and that very well could be. So if that's the case, then you might want to do it. But I don't like, let's just load up for draft picks for next year so you can go get a quarterback next year. Well, what's that do this year,
Right.
And that kind of blows up the whole idea of trying to make Myles happy with another 2-15, 3-14 season.
Right. So we know, Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, unless they have guaranteed money in their contracts, which I think Jimmy Haslam may have learned a bit about, that there's no way they do this deal, right? Because they're not making those draft picks in 2026 because they're gone by then, for sure. Comment from Bill P. He says, I love Myles, but he's not winning them games. The Browns have the oldest, most expensive roster in the NFL. It's time to rip it down to the studs, and trading Myles can help the rebuild. The problem is with Barry cannot be the one to rebuild it. And that's certainly a legitimate argument could be made on that score. We're not going to litigate that today, but let's say all these problems were erased, Fred. All these financial issues, all the problems with the front office and their jobs and all this sort of stuff. Theoretically, if you could trade Myles and you could get 3 first-round picks for him, right? Not at the bottom of the draft, not from the Lions or whatever, I'd look at that deal and that's like a Deshaun Watson type deal. If Deshaun Watson was at the top of his game, would you make that deal? For not for a starting quarterback.
Well, if you could assure me you got C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson, I mean, they got their. Right. That's what I was just saying. The Cam Ward, Abdul Carter. If you had that number 1 pick, you can make sure you get whatever quarterback, and you could get Abdul Carter. So, but that's what it comes back to: is do you just go by what everybody's saying? That it comes down to your belief. Do you believe? Right. That Cam Ward is the guy? Do you believe Shedeur Sanders is the guy? Or even somebody down the line. But if they're down the line, why wouldn't you take them with the second pick or first pick,
right,
to make sure you got them? So it's such an inexact science. I think Barry has proven he's a better judge of talent, when it comes to trades or even some free agents, because you know what you got. And that's what I'm saying. If you're trading Myles Garrett, you want a Micah Parsons, or you want CD Lamb. You want somebody or 2 guys that are good. You just got to deal with the financials. Barry's been good with dealing with the financials. He takes on a guy, restructures, and it's not a problem because Haslam pays the upfront bonuses and lets him do that. So right. Drafting, that's where I think, I don't know if they've done this, they haven't announced, but bringing in consultants to help you with the draft. One that I mentioned to some of our guys, when Rand Carthen got fired by the Titans, if I didn't hire him as a consultant, I would bring him in immediately and get all the information on what the Titans are right. thinking of doing with the first pick. Even though a new GM would change it, he knows what Brian Callahan, if he likes those quarterbacks or not, and what they were thinking of doing until he got fired. That would give you a lot of intel, on, where you're at, even before the Myles Garrett thing. But there's just, it's going to be fascinating, I'm sure, from around the league to watch this process play out. We have seen, ones where the Lamar Jacksons, it was like an impasse. He's never going to play there again, but he got his big contract. You never even hear about it anymore. So right. I don't know if Myles is just trying to burn so much of a bridge that there's no way they can come back from it. But even I still think the Browns stand unless they get blown away with something that they clearly come out better off than having Myles Garrett. How can you trade a first ballot Hall of Famer? It's, might be the best player you ever had in your history, and you're trading, and you just get some draft picks and hope that you can hit on them.
Right. Well, a lot of things need to snap into place. I'd say the front office needs that guarantee from Haslam. The right deal has to happen. The financials have to work. A lot of things have to happen before Myles Garrett goes anywhere else. Difficult to prognosticate whether that's going to be the case. Fumble 13 offers up his feelings of woe here. Pairing Garrett and Abdul Carter was my dream scenario. Why can't I have nice things? He asks. Well, that's a good question. I mean, giving Myles Garrett a wingman, I thought that was a big part of the appeal of this potential draft pick of Abdul Carter, in that it might make it very appealing for him to stay, but that doesn't seem to have any effect, does it, Fred?
No, I mean, he's a young guy. I mean, he's not for NFL, but he's 29.
Mm-hmm.
I have to think he spent a week at the Pro Bowl. Can you not see, name the number, another selfish reason, of players around the league, the Micah Parsons, the Zadarius Smith, everyone, Myles, you got to get out of there and join us. We'll win the Super Bowl. You got to get out of Cleveland. You get told that all week by all these other players for their selfish reasons. I think that plays on it. I just don't think that, he's just sitting there going, the more I think about it, the Browns have no shot for the rest of my life. They're done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done with them. It's like, how does that change in that short of a time? Why didn't he say this earlier? Why would does he get on HBO and say, we're not as far off as you might think, or people think,
right?
And lead everybody believe everything's smooth. And then all of a sudden, boom, he throws a bombshell.
Right.
I thought it was a joke when I heard it. I wasn't home, and I'm like, there's no way. There's no way this just happened, But, and then he cites the Luka trade. Anything can happen, I'm like. But I feel bad for Browns fans. I feel bad, it's different for me. But I want to cover a good team, and I don't want to go through this 2016, 2017 stuff of a rebuild and starting all over again and hoping you get the right guys. I mean, that just at this stage of the whole thing, it's no fun for anybody, and on top of it, they're trying to build a dome. I don't think that's one of the reasons they don't want to rebuild, is start all over again and be the scourge of the NFL again at 1-17 or 1-16 and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Things can change. But right now, it seems to be about lower than what it was when we finally realized how bad Deshaun Watson trade was.
Right. Exactly. Well, Fumble 13, I feel you, that you can't have nice things. I've been covering this team for a long time. Fred's been covering this team for a long time. It'd be nice to cover a Super Bowl winning team, have positive stories to tell. It all leads to stress. And you know what you need to do when you're under stress, my friend? Is go work out. Go get some exercise with some Core Home Fitness. Core Home Fitness supports OBR Weekly. They support the Newswire. They support the OBR. And they, by the way, make the best adjustable dumbbells on the planet. Don't take it from me. Take it from the people who review this particular product. These are the best available. Men's Health says so. Consumers Report says so. Anyone who has taken a look at these products say so. Also, take a look at their website. They now have an app that you can subscribe to that has all kinds of training materials on it, can lead you on your fitness journey. They put a ton of work into that, I know. and it's well worth taking a look at, seeing if it might work for you. So between the dumbbells, the fitness app, these guys really have the products that you need to hit your goals, crush your goals in 2025. So check out corehomefitness.com for the ultimate in-home fitness equipment. They've stepped up to sponsor the OBR. They rock. Please support Core Home Fitness. Thank you very much, folks. And Humble 13, I hope that helps you out, buddy. Let's go on to some additional questions on this topic. Surgeon DC says something I can certainly relate to. He says, I'm a hardcore fan. I'm not going anywhere. But tell me why any casual younger fan would have an attachment to this team. I was talking about that with a member of my family earlier this week, and I accepted all responsibility for passing on an attachment to the Cleveland Browns to him. In this particular case, it was my fault. It was my oversight as a parent to try to pass my failure of a football team onto him. But it's tough. It's tough. I saw those kids out there protesting the, maybe a dozen or so kids out there, young. They were all young, protesting the Myles Garrett thing in front of the stadium. And, first I was surprised that there were so many young kids out there in that, young men out there in that, I didn't think that there was that much youthful support for the Cleveland Browns, given what's happened these last 30 years. But, I appreciate their desire to make themselves heard. But it's tough, Fred. I mean, we've seen sort of a lost generation here the last 25 years or so. Have you noticed, that the Browns audience seems to be aging a bit along with you and I? You're on mute, my friend.
I think that, I think a lot of it's running on interest of the Bernie Kosar era. That was, my son's 42, and he's said to me not too long ago, Dad, why am I a Browns fan?
Right.
And he's got the kids, they're all in Browns gear, and it's, I don't know. It's I think part of his was when he was just a little kid, Webster Slaughter, Michael Dean Perry. Back in those days, I used to be able to take them to practice, and they'd come over and give them wristbands, and it was really hands-on type stuff that you can't do anymore. But I do think I go up to Rochester, New York, and of all places, they got Browns fans that are, 75, 85 years old, and they started watching the Browns because there was no team. The Browns were the only team on TV back when Jim Brown was playing up there, and so they became Browns fans. And they're still Browns fans. The Browns have tried to kill off the fan base with that 0-16, 1-15, like a whack-a-mole. They just keep whacking them, but they keep coming up. And they'll still be here, but it's just, you wonder how in the world, they took your team, all these things. It just seems like the Browns are due, if anybody's due, just like the Lions this year. You really thought it was a destiny, Browns, Lions, to reunite from the 1950s.
Right.
I tell my kids and grandkids how in the 50s, that was before me, Browns and Lions were the pick your team, Chiefs, Patriots, winning every year. And now they're both looked at as the scourge, not anymore with the Lions, but the Browns are still down there. So, it's a very, tough sell. And they always seem to come back. They were starting to come back, even last year, the 11-6, everybody's kind of getting excited. That's why last off season was so quiet, because they didn't seem like they needed to make a lot of moves, and they were heading on the right path. And then 3-14, you're right back dragging the bottom again.
Right. Exactly. how things change in a year, but the Commanders have shown us that they can change positively too as well. Maybe not in this particular time zone, but maybe someday. I keep telling myself the wait, all the trial, all the difficult years will make it that much more rewarding when we finally finish on top, right? Right? We can tell ourselves that. Here's a question from Broken Arrow. Any word on Bitonio? So if things can't get any worse, this might be a ripple effect of this whole nonsense that Joel Bitonio decides not to come back. What are you thinking, Fred?
Well, he went out to the Pro Bowl. I took it, even though it's just kind of like a fun and games thing.
Yeah.
I took it as a positive. But then I think, again, some reporter talked to him and he was still non-committal, that now he was going to go take some time to think. I think some of this stuff's going to play in. I mean, if truly they're going to rebuild, then what do you need, 2 or 3 30-something linemen and that whole thing. So that's what I was saying, is that by Myles to take this public, you don't know what this is affecting Denzel Ward. You don't know this, and I don't know if he knows more about JOK, like, does this have anything to do with him? Like, he goes, well, he's not going to play. I mean, nothing was said, but you know what I mean? If he's like, well, we got to replace him. And so who knows? But it just seems kind of bleak right now. And I guess always darkest just before dawn. So you hope that you can come out of this and, be able to make the moves to get this on the right path. Like, I really don't think they're maybe as good as they were 11-6 year, but I don't think they're as bad as 3-14. I still think you can be relevant. I think you're not far from being a playoff team. Just they showed a lot of the same guys the year before, and you didn't have great quarterback play until you had Joe Flacco. So, I thought and still think a lot predicates on who you're going to bring here at quarterback. Even if you draft Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, I still think you bring in Kirk Cousins. I think that was a positive news to find out that maybe he was still injured and he was playing, and they finally benched him because his injury was, causing him to play all the worse. But, whether it's a Derek Carr, you can make the best out of the situation. I really think good quarterback play. And I wouldn't say Jameis Winston was great quarterback play, but they were in just every game they had a chance when he was at quarterback, because the offense, unfortunately, he was also the reason they lost him was because of the interception. So
right.
I still think quarterback is the most important thing. You're not going to win until you get a quarterback, whether you have Myles Garrett or not. Myles Garrett is kind of the quarterback on defense, but that quarterback on offense is really what takes you to championships in today's NFL.
I'm going to put up like 4 different questions that we've gotten here, and they're all kind of similar. There's kind of a theme that runs between them. So I don't want to be dismissive of any of the questions, but there's sort of a common theme here. World's Fastest Fat Man asks, it strikes me as possible that Myles could be reacting to Senior Bowl news as well. Maybe the front office tells him something he doesn't like, and here we are. Next question, Fumble 13 says, it seems unlike him. I wonder if his agents helped push him to this. Kelly asked, besides the Deshaun Watson debacle, were there other factors at play that led to this? And from the same person, do you have insight into what the Browns' plans are that Myles doesn't align with? So, with the common theme between those questions is we're trying to figure out what in the world is going through Myles' head that prompted him to do this at this particular time, right? I think that's the common theme here. We're just looking for an explanation, why Myles, why now? Who have you been talking to? those sort of things. And you postulated last week that it might, when we were talking, that it might have something to do with the Pro Bowl, right? Going and talking to people at the Pro Bowl. But now it appears that Clutch Sports was involved, so on and so forth. But doesn't this, I've used this word before, but doesn't this come off looking sort of impulsive to you, Fred, that maybe it's possible that as quickly as he changed his mind in this direction, he could change it back, 2 months from now?
Yeah, and that's, like I'm saying, I almost feel like he's putting himself out there, burning as many bridges as he can so he can't turn back. The ships are
Right.
burning, so to say. I don't know what the reference to the Senior Bowl was, unless they were saying that there's no quarterback worth taking. I really don't think that was the path to get the team back to the playoffs this year. It's more, that's a long-term answer you got to get. But as far as the quarterback, that they haven't even, been able to show what they're going to do. And, because it isn't, the league year hasn't started.
Right.
I think he said that LeBron was involved in that. Clutch Sports, LeBron James very involved in that. I mean, that's his buddy Rich Paul. He helped him get started, and that he had a hand in it. That whole agency did, and I'm sure they said this is the plan, how to get, where you want to go, whether you like it or not. I disagree with it, and I just think that if he ends up and the Browns aren't going to trade him because they can't trade him, you're not doing any favors for the team that is trying to put you in a position to win a Super Bowl.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know what he's totally trying to accomplish there. Could have done the same thing without making such a big public deal out of it. I think that's the number one question everybody wants to know is, why did you change your mind? He's on the record on HBO saying what he did, unless he's saying he's lying. But yeah, somebody planted something that this is the best way to do this. And it seems out of character to him. He kind of talks out of both sides of his mouth sometimes, but whatever the advice is, I just don't see the upside, how this makes him look like anything but a sympathetic figure.
Right.
He's toiling away. Joe Thomas spent his whole career here, never won a championship, never even made the playoffs, So
First ballot Hall of Famer, universally beloved.
He said, that he respects and trusts Kevin Stefanski. So, do you or don't you? It's just very mysterious. And like I said, today's athlete can go on a whim, say whatever, and usually they're never held accountable for it. It's nobody really knows but him what happened. It'll probably come out, what caused him, but somebody in his circle that he respects, and it might have been LeBron, saying just make a demand, make an ultimatum, and let him deal with it. It's a little different than free agency, where you can just write the letter and saying, no matter what you offer me, I'm leaving. They have a thing called the franchise tag. How many people have thrown a fit when they got the franchise tag?
Yeah.
After they were, teams just don't give away assets. This isn't, a second string left tackle. It's the best asset you have. You just can't throw it out in the wind and say, oh, well, sorry, right, we don't want to hurt his feelings. He's been good, so let's just let him control our future here. And I think maybe in that meeting he said, nope, that's not good enough. I want out of here. And when Andrew Berry said, well, we don't anticipate, trading him or anything, he's going to go from Cleveland to Canton and that.
Mhm.
Maybe all along that he had been maintaining that, but I don't know why he got on TV and said the opposite or told us in person the opposite.
Right.
I thought it
Well,
was a good thing. I'll say this, that he said those things to begin with, that I want to know the plan. I want to know that we're not
mhm.
rebuilding. They had to have told him they're not rebuilding.
Yeah.
And how can he know the plan when the plan hasn't even got here? They could say, we're going to go get I can't imagine them saying, we're not going to get a new quarterback. We're going with Deshaun Watson, even if he can't play next year. We're going to wait until he comes back in November. They're not. That isn't the plan. So, yeah.
Well, that's the question that didn't get asked, today. Oh, I'm not in alignment with their plans. Well, what in their plans are you not in alignment with, right? We don't know those details, right? We are not in his cranium. We're not, privy
Because
to
the
that.
national media question people are not really caring, the Browns' fate. They just want to be on the good side or whatever in presenting that we understand you're a champion, Hall of Famer, you need to go somewhere else.
Yeah. I do this thing every day called the OBR Daily Newswire, right? I get up and I collate all the stories from, the credentialed Browns media. I try to get rid of all the clickbaity stuff and all that. And I try to leave you with the good stuff, non-subscription stuff, so you don't get hit by paywalls. Before that, there's a lot of nattering and prattling, that's nonsense. You can scroll through that. But then there's a bunch of links, right? So I follow what the media says every day. And, 24 hours ago, one of the themes in the media was, oh, this isn't a new thing. This has been going on for a while, right? It just wasn't reported that Myles was unhappy. I've known, I couldn't say anything, but I've known for a while that he's unhappy. I mean, that was sort of a theme going through some of the media outlets. And the point is, that wasn't what Myles was saying, right? He wasn't out there publicly saying that he's unhappy with the direction that the Browns. He was saying he wanted to finish his career in Cleveland, right? So if he's saying one thing to one person and another thing to another person, I don't think you can say one thing is the truth and one isn't the truth right now. You've got a guy who seems to be saying different messages to different audiences, right? Like Chris Roscoe, here says, I've been a fan since the Kelly days, but I can't deal with this front office. And that's legitimate. That's a legitimate opinion to have, that you're unimpressed with Andrew Berry and DePodesta and that group. He says Myles is tired of the incompetences of this front office. He's getting older. He wants a Super Bowl. And that's, perfectly legitimate. That could be just as simple as that. And all the analysis that we're doing is, way overly complex, and, we're overthinking it too much and all that sort of stuff. And, it could just be that. But we're sort of left incredulous because of all the different things he said over time that we're trying to figure out why this, why now, right? And where the hell do the Cleveland Browns go from here? Question from Larry, Fred, about Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski and their status within your organization. He asked, does drafting a quarterback at pick 2 give them a little bit more grace time? So if they pick up Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders or even a Jalen Milroe or somebody like that with pick number 2, does that give them a grace year?
It depends on what, the ownership and them, agreed to do. Like, let's get a veteran quarterback and develop, a rookie that might not be ready to play right now, or we're going to draft him and we're going to play him right away. You can't expect immediate results like you had with Jaden Daniels, but they got the contract. They might have assurances that we're not moving on from you guys. I think another season, not even as bad as this year. You got one or both of them has to be looked at moving on from, because, I mean, what do you have to point to? Right now you got 5 years, you got 2 playoff appearances, which seem like good, but then followed by tanking years. It seemed like every time they went to playoff, the next year they're back, middle of the road or worse. So their whole point was sustained, growth. They're going to have and try to show by their play next year that this was more of a blip in the screen than reality.
Yeah.
Because right now, Myles making it look like this is reality. This team is not going to win more than 3 games next year. It's over.
The question is, what's the true level of talent on the roster? Is it the 2024 or 2023 teams? Because you're getting much different answers from both of them based on the level of quarterback play. Let's say for a minute that we could overcome the financial hurdles and all this sort of stuff, and we're just looking at offers. Do you, if you're the Cleveland Browns, even take those calls, Fred?
Yeah. I put it up for bid, and I'm not so much interested in draft picks, future draft picks, especially with a unless the team's drafting 1 or 3 or 4, at the top of this draft. I'm not looking for a 2026 first round pick. That means nothing. If you can get guys right now to transform your team so you have a jump start, you got to use Myles Garrett as a jump start, like you mentioned earlier, what Houston did with what they got for Watson from the Browns. They got their quarterback, their Myles Garrett. They got Will Anderson and C.J. Stroud, Tank Dell. They got like 6 or 7 ascending Pro Bowl type players, in a couple years there. But I don't know if, unless you wait until after June, how you can even trade. But if you did trade and you can get a quarterback, then you do it. But if you can get a quarterback, like get the number 1 pick, if you're sold that one of these quarterbacks, you can get the 1 or 3 pick, then you make the move. But I don't see how you can't solve right now. I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. The number 1 problem on this team is quarterback. As great as Myles Garrett is, he doesn't gonna win you a championship anyway.
Yeah.
They're 3-14 with the defensive player of the year, So you got to get a quarterback. So if this is the only way you can do that, do it.
Right. There's just I asked the question because there's some folks in the OBR team that are kind of like, no, I don't even, he's not getting traded. So it won't work financially for us without, completely, boiling the roster. And so, forget about it. I'm still of the opinion. I'm sort of like you. I'm just, make me an offer. There's always a Jerry Jones out there. There's always a Mark Davis out there. There's always somebody willing to give you something stupid, in exchange for the shiniest bauble on the shelf,
Well, that's what I think is you got to get somebody, somebody said, JJ McCarthy. I don't know, if that, but if you can get a quarterback, ascending quarterback, or even if the Saints aren't sure about a Derek Carr or Seahawks, Geno Smith, you could throw somebody like that into the deal. Then you have them for 2 or 3 years, and maybe you don't get Myles Garrett, but you got, Abdul Carter, or stuff like that. Is you just got to think outside the box because you got to decide what is the best of the situation,
Right.
And you got to do what's best for the Browns. And you, even if you say you don't want to trade them, like I said, I don't know how they do that. The only scenario I saw is wait till after June 1st. But then I don't know you can do that late. You can't tell, hey, don't trade your quarterback to us till June 2nd. Well, but it's, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it would jive. You can have because things can fall apart quickly, and then what are you going to do?
Exactly. Well, I tell you what, we have hit the 8 o'clock mark. There's still a couple of questions we didn't get to. I apologize if we didn't get to your questions, but the questions that we did get to sparked a lot of interesting discussion, a lot of great comments in the chat room. Really enjoyed them, reading through them during the course of the show, all the feedback that we got from you guys during the show. Always great. Thank you very much for hanging out with us. Thanks for Core Home Fitness for sponsoring the program. And thanks as always, Fred, for lending us your wisdom during the course of the hour. We will be back here. Well, actually, I will be back here next Wednesday. Fred, you get a week off next week, don't you?
That's how it stands right now. Yeah.
All right. As it stands right now, it'll be Barry and somebody. I can't do this thing myself. So it'll be a surprise guest or guests next Wednesday for OBR Weekly. We will see you then at 7 o'clock.
I'm holding out.
You're kind of a spineless weasel.
I want to be traded.
Exactly. Get out of here. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, folks.